It's forever history here. You are watching a World War II episode I made on island hopping during World War II. Today, we're going to be talking about the Allied island hopping campaign in the Pacific. You know what time it is? It's time to get the islands back. The Japanese had taken over many of the islands in the Pacific, and it was up to the Allies to kick them out. But there were so many islands, so the Allies devised a plan to take back the most strategically important ones while bypassing the ones that the Japanese had heavily fortified. So let's hop into it. The first island that we're going to talk about today is this one right here, New Guinea. New Guinea was an important island to take back because if the Japanese were allowed to stay on the island, they could use it as a base to launch attacks on Australia. So the Allies launched an attack on the island, and the Japanese were eventually forced to retreat into the mountains. The Allies then took the major cities, and by January 1943, most of the Japanese soldiers were dead, captured, or had retreated. Next up is the island of Timor. The Japanese took over this island very early in the war, but it wasn't really strategically important to them. The Allies didn't really have to do much fighting to get the Japanese out. Most of the Japanese soldiers on the island were actually killed by the Australians who took the island over. Next up, we've got the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands were very important for the Japanese because they were only 600 miles away from Australia. If the Japanese were allowed to stay on these islands, they could definitely attack Australia. But the Allies had a hard time taking the islands because the Japanese had built strong defensive positions on them. Despite this, the Allies were able to push the Japanese back little by little until they eventually took all of the major islands. Moving on, we have the Marshall Islands. These islands were important for the Japanese because they controlled the shipping lanes between Japan and Germany. The Allies again had a hard time taking the islands because the Japanese had built strong defensive positions. But the Allies eventually took the islands after a long and bloody battle. After the Marshall Islands, we have the Mariana Islands. These islands were important for the Japanese because they were only 200 miles away from the mainland of Japan. The Allies knew that if they were able to take these islands, they could use them as a base to launch the invasion of Japan. The Japanese knew this too, so they fought very hard to keep the islands. They built strong defensive positions and they also used a lot of civilians as soldiers. Despite this, the Allies were able to take the islands after a very bloody battle. And that is the end of Part 5. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe to Forever History, and I will see you next time.